The house felt unusually hollow when Lena Harper failed to return from her evening walk. Evan stood in the doorway, staring into the quiet street where the orange street lamp flickered against the cold pavement. Lena's scarf lay curled beneath it, as if dropped mid-step. He picked it up and felt an unexpected chill seep through the wool. He dialed her number again. The phone rang once, twice, then fell into the same crushing silence that had followed him all night. 17 missed calls glowed on his screen like a warning he refused to acknowledge. Evan swallowed hard and walked back inside, every board under his feet creaking as though the house was holding its breath. Narration slid through his thoughts with the weight of memory. Their marriage had never been the picture-perfect life he told people it was. Lena was soft-spoken, patient, always careful with her words, yet lately she had begun shutting her bedroom door during arguments and staring at him with a guarded expression he pretended not to notice. Last week she told him she needed space. She had hidden her phone behind a stack of books when he walked into the room. He told himself she was just tired, but suspicion lingered inside him like a shadow that stretched into every conversation. He tried calling again. This time his voice shook slightly as he spoke into the automated voicemail. "Lena, it's late. Please pick up." His hand trembled, and a tightness curled in his chest. Worry and something sharper pressed against his ribs, forcing his breath shallow. As dawn crept through the curtains, pale and indifferent, Evan finally pressed the number for emergency services. His voice cracked as he reported her missing, but there was an odd edge beneath the fear, a tension he kept forcing down. When the officers arrived, he led them to the kitchen table where Lena's bag still lay untouched. One officer asked to see her recent messages. Evan unlocked her phone and hovered for a heartbeat too long. A single unread message pulsed at the top of the screen. His thumb twitched. He deleted it before handing the phone over, clearing his throat to mask the action. The officer raised an eyebrow at his hesitation. Evan looked away as he murmured, "I just want her found." The deletion lingered between them like a secret that refused to stay buried, pushing the investigation toward its first crack. Detective Mara Quinn stepped into the Harper home with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years reading truth in the smallest twitch of a face. The morning light slipped across the cluttered living room, revealing overturned cushions and a mug cracked at the rim. Evan stood beside the table gripping another mug so tightly his knuckles blanched. Mara watched the tremor in his fingers before she opened her notebook. "Mr. Harper, when did you last speak to your wife?" she asked. Evan cleared his throat. "Before she left for her walk. She said she needed air." His voice wavered and Mara caught the slight quiver at the corner of his mouth. As she continued questioning him, narration laid itself over the scene like an intrusive truth. Evan had always prided himself on being attentive, yet his attentiveness had sharpened into vigilance. He checked Lena's location whenever she ran late. He asked about her colleagues with a stiffness that suggested he expected betrayal. Every argument in this room had echoed with raised voices muffled by walls that had grown tired of hearing them. Mara paused her notes. Did Lena often leave to get air during the night? Evan hesitated. His pupils tightened before he answered. She did sometimes. She said the house felt suffocating. The words slipped out faster than he intended. He winced. Mara leaned forward. Did she tell you why she felt that way? He faltered. She threatened to disappear when things got heated. She never meant it. She wanted to win the argument. Mara closed her notebook with a sharp snap. The sound cut through the room like a blade. Evan flinched and the mug rattled in his hands. A faint memory flickered behind his eyes of Lena's voice rising as she pushed past him, saying she needed space and that silence had become safer than honesty. "Mr. Harper," Mara said slowly, "you told the responding officers she left at 8:30. Just now you said 9. Which is it?" Evan swallowed hard. His gaze drifted toward the window where the abandoned scarf still lay. "It was 8:30, he whispered. Mara did not look away. "Then why did you change your story?" she asked. "And what exactly are you trying to hide?" Detective Mara Quinn left the Harper home with a tightness in her chest. Evan's shifting answers echoed in her mind as she returned to the station. By late afternoon, she sat beneath a solitary desk lamp that cast long shadows across her paperwork. Lena's phone records lay open before her, a neat column of calls and messages that told a far louder story than Evan ever had. One entry stood out. A contact saved under a single initial. A. Mara clicked the expanded log, and the last message appeared with stark clarity. A. Don't come here. The timestamp was minutes before Lena vanished. Mara stared at the screen, feeling a surge of unease settle over her shoulders. Someone had warned Lena. Someone she trusted enough to message repeatedly in the days leading up to her disappearance. She leaned back, the narration threading through her thoughts like a cold current. Lena had been preparing for something. Every indication pointed to a woman quietly bracing herself for a decisive move. Whether she intended to leave her marriage, expose a secret, or meet this mysterious A, Lena had been petrified. And fear had a way of sharpening truth. Before Mara could dig further, Evan arrived at the station unannounced. His face was pale, his posture stiff. He insisted he had remembered something important and needed to speak to her immediately. I loved Lena, he said, voice cracking. She knew that. She just twisted everything into something darker. She always did that when she wanted to punish me. Mara watched him carefully. Punish you how? She would ignore my calls or stay out late to worry me. She did it to get a reaction. She liked seeing me afraid. His words spilled out too quickly. Behind them, Mara sensed the real truth rising like a tide. Evan loved Lena with a desperation that suffocated rather than sheltered. His fear of losing her had warped into something controlling, something unsteady, something she suspected Lena had finally found the courage to confront. Mara's phone buzzed. The reverse lookup on the mysterious number had completed. She opened it. The name on the screen stopped her breath short. It belonged to someone Evan had sworn he would never speak to again. The name linked to the contact a haunted Detective Mara Quinn for the rest of the night. It led her straight to Sarah Hale, Lena's closest friend, a woman who had shared school corridors, rented flats, and late-night confessions with her since they were teenagers. Mara invited Sarah to the station the next morning. When she arrived, she looked as if she had barely slept. Her sleeves were pulled over her hands, and she gripped the fabric so tightly her knuckles turned white. The moment Evan stepped into the waiting area, Sarah stiffened. Her eyes flicked to the floor with a fear that didn't need translation. Mara caught it instantly and guided her into an interview room away from his shadow. Sarah, when was the last time you saw Lena? Mara asked. Sarah's voice trembled. 3 days before she vanished. She came to my flat shaking. She said someone was following her. Mara leaned forward. Someone or Evan? Sarah shut her eyes as if bracing herself. She thought it was Evan. She said she kept hearing footsteps behind her on her way home. She said he knew places she had never told him about. She stopped going to the nursery alone because she felt watched. The narration inside Mara's thoughts carried a heavier truth. Lena had not been a paranoid woman. She sounded like someone who had spent months pretending her fear was imagination until reality cornered her. Sarah swallowed hard and reached into her bag. A tiny memory card slid across the table. She recorded everything, Sarah whispered. Voices outside the house. Arguments. Calls she didn't want to delete. All of it from the week before she disappeared. Mara stared at the card. Where is her phone? That is the problem, Sarah said, her voice cracking. It vanished the night before she did. She told me she hid it somewhere safe because she thought Evan would take it. Mara's pulse quickened. Why would she think that? Sarah hesitated. Her fingers twisted the edge of her sleeve as if she feared the words themselves. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost silent. Because he told me he would destroy the recordings if I stayed quiet. He said Lena was making him look dangerous. Mara felt the air shift as the truth sharpened. Sarah lifted her head, eyes red with fear. Detective, she whispered, I think he already has. Detective Mara Quinn left the interview room with a weight tightening across her ribs. Sarah Hale's confession replayed in her mind as she drafted the warrant request. By midday, the signature was approved. The moment the document hit her palm, something inside her shifted. The investigation was no longer circling suspicion. It was diving straight into it. Evan Harper stood on the driveway as officers approached the house. His posture was tense and unsteady, as if he had forgotten how to hold himself upright. When Mara stepped forward, he raised both hands in a trembling gesture of compliance. I only ever tried to protect her, he said. You have to understand that. Mara ignored the plea and ordered the team inside. The house felt colder than before, as though the night itself had seeped into the walls. The living room smelled faintly of damp earth. Every footstep echoed with an unnatural hollowness. "Start with the lower floor," Mara instructed. 2 officers moved toward the basement door. The beam of a flashlight cut through the dim hallway, illuminating deep scratches in the wood. They weren't random or horrid. They looked deliberate, carved in a straight descending pattern. Mara brushed her fingertips across the grooves and felt the splintered edges catch her skin. "Evan," she called, "how long have these marks been here?" He shook his head rapidly. "She panics sometimes. She tried to get away from things she imagined. I had to keep her safe." The narration of Mara's thoughts grew sharper. He was fracturing under the pressure. His words clung to desperation rather than clarity. His fear of losing Lena had not protected her. It had warped into something unstable and unpredictable. As officers descended the basement stairs, the narrow beam of light revealed dust unsettled by recent movement. A faint trail of dried mud led back up the steps and curved into the kitchen. Mara followed it, her pulse rising. The trail ended at the refrigerator door. The mud was smeared across the linoleum, as if someone had been dragged or pushed while resisting. Evan hovered behind her, shaking. "She wanted to stay hidden," he murmured. "I did what she needed." One of the officers shouted from the kitchen, urgency cutting through the air. "Detective Quinn," he called, "you need to see inside this fridge." The refrigerator door lifted with a slow metallic groan, and the room fell silent. Detective Mara Quinn stepped closer, expecting the worst. Instead, her breath caught as the beam of a flashlight revealed a small figure wedged between folded blankets. A teenage boy lay curled inside, his skin mottled with bruises, his lips cracked, his chest rising in shallow, frightened breaths. His eyes blinked rapidly against the harsh light, flinching each time it touched him. An officer instinctively reached for the radio, but the boy raised a shaking hand, barely able to keep it steady. His voice rasped in a soft plea. "Please, don't shut the door again." Before Mara could respond, Evan lunged forward. Officers restrained him instantly, forcing him to the kitchen floor. He thrashed beneath their weight, his voice spiraling into panic. He wasn't meant to be found yet. "You don't understand what she was doing. She ruined everything." Mara crouched beside the boy, keeping her tone measured. "You're safe now. Can you tell me your name?" He swallowed with difficulty. "Callum." The narration in Mara's mind turned colder. This boy was not Lena. He was part of something deeper, something Lena had uncovered before she vanished. His presence in the house was not accidental. It was a message she had been trying to send. Mara pulled back the blanket slightly and saw rope marks around his wrists. "Callum, did Lena bring you here?" He nodded slowly. "She found me near the old railway bridge. She said I wasn't the only one. She said she had to go back for the others." Mara's stomach tightened. "Where is she now?" Callum's breathing turned uneven, panic rising as he glanced at Evan pinned to the floor. He tried to follow her. She ran before he could stop her. "She told me to hide. She said he would try again." Evan's cries twisted into incoherent shouts, but Callum's whisper cut through every sound in the room. His fingers gripped Mara's sleeve with surprising strength. "Detective," he whispered, "you need to run." Callum's warning echoed in Detective Mara Quinn's mind long after paramedics took him from the Harper house. His fear had not been the fear of a lost child. It was the fear of someone who had seen the truth and barely survived it. Once he was stable enough to speak, he gave Mara a location. A rundown storage complex on the outskirts of Hartsford, the kind of place where rust lingered on every door, and no one asked questions. Mara drove there with 2 officers at dawn. The air smelled of cold metal and damp earth. Callum had described the unit as a room Lena visited alone, using a false name no one in her life would recognize. The manager confirmed it with a hesitant nod. She paid in cash. Never spoke much. Kept her head down, he said, passing Mara a tarnish key. The unit creaked open, with reluctant resistance. Dust rose in a thin cloud, illuminated by a single flickering bulb that swung faintly above them. What lay inside struck Mara with a force that rooted her to the threshold. The walls were covered in photographs pinned by copper tacks, each connected by taut lines of red string. Newspaper cuttings had been marked with narrow strokes of ink. Maps were plastered across the far side, dotted with dates and sightings. Lena had built an entire investigation in secret, led with detail far too precise for coincidence. Mara stepped forward, heart thudding. She traced one piece of string that linked an old missing person case to Evan's name. Years before Lena met him, a young man named Rowan Berwick had disappeared without a trace. Police had suspected foul play, but never found enough to charge anyone. On the map, Rowan's name appeared again beside dates only weeks old. Mara whispered. She was tracking him. One officer found a folder stacked with Lena's handwritten notes. The pages held observations about Evan's movements, unexplained nights away, strangers visiting their street. Lena had been living beside a truth that had steadily hollowed her life until she finally faced it alone. At the back of the room, half hidden under a crate, sat a narrow metal box sealed with an old brass latch. Dust coated its surface. Mara lifted it onto the table, snapping the latch open with her thumb. Inside lay a small camera wrapped in cloth. The screen was cracked but intact. A single recording waited in the memory. Mara pressed play. Lena's shaken voice filled the room. "If you're watching this, he has already lied to you," she said, breath tight with fear. "And he is not finished." The screen cut to static, but Mara felt the warning settle like ice across her spine. Someone had escaped Evan before. Someone connected to Rowan Berwick. Someone still out there. The recording ended with a static growl, and Mara felt the air drain from her lungs. Lena's trembling voice, the urgency in every syllable, pointed them toward a place no one had mentioned before. Within an hour, patrol cars were cutting through the woodland road, tires cracking fallen branches as the abandoned cabin came into view. It stood crooked among the trees, its roof sagging as if exhausted from keeping its secrets. A faint breeze nudged the door, pushing it inward and releasing a low creak that rasped into the cold air. "Stay behind me," Mara ordered as she stepped inside. The cabin smelled of damp timber and iron. A single chair lay overturned by the hearth. Scrapes along the floor formed a desperate arc, as if someone had been dragged. Detective Rowan Hale swept his torch across the shadows and froze. "Detective, over here." Mara knelt beside the small table. Lena's silver necklace, the one she never removed, lay beside a thin smear of blood that had dried into the wood grain. Mara touched it gently, feeling the faintest warmth of panic rise in her chest. "She fought," Mara murmured. Rowan nodded. "And recently." Every movement they made unsettled another layer of dust, yet a set of footprints led deeper into the cabin. The prints were small, lighter than an adult's, weaving toward a rear door that hung crooked on its hinges. Mara glanced back at Rowan. Lena followed the boy here. She must have found him before Evan could move him again. Rowan replied, "But Evan said the boy escaped. He never said where he ran." Mara stepped slowly toward the rear room. Scraps of rope lay on the floor, frayed at the edges. A torn shirt lay near the wall, sized for a child. The temperature dipped sharply as the torches illuminated claw marks on the door frame, narrow and frantic. She was trying to save him, Mara whispered. And he was trying to force something out of her. Something about A. A deep breath filled the silence as Rowan scanned the room again. His beam caught something new. Mud tracked from the rear door across the wooden planks, still wet at the edges. Someone had been here no more than minutes earlier. Mara's pulse thudded. "Rowan, these tracks are fresh." The wind pushed the cabin door again, but this time another sound rose beneath it. A faint shuffle. A hitching breath. A whisper, soft but unmistakably human, drifting from the darkness beyond the rear door. "Detective," Rowan said quietly, "someone is still inside." The whisper came again, trembling, as if squeezed through pain and terror. "Please, don't let him find me."